Welcome to JMR Talks. Today we will discuss about attributes. Most of the times we keep talking about skills. Nowadays, we are talking about upskilling, reskilling, and all that. But do skills alone what you call determine the performance of an individual, or are there any what you call attributes that determine ultimately their attitude, which plays a key role in what you call deciding about their performance and all that? Now, what is an attribute? Attribute is a quality, character, particular to a particular thing or what we call individual. Now, we are in a situation where all other resources are either available, accessible, or affordable. So, given such a situation, it is a talented human resource which plays a what we call key role. In other words, they provide the cutting edge to what we call organizations. And these attributes, which are not called what we call behavioral competencies, they make the individual what we call unique and what we call determine what we call effectiveness. Now, what are those behavioral competencies? Being adaptable, patience, being flexible. For instance, we started with what we call fixed mindset. Then people said, no, growth mindset. But today, the kind of VUCA environment we are existing, we are talking about fluid. A fluid mindset is what we call nothing but being flexible at the same time, trying to what we call improve. That's fine. What's the issue? Why to talk about attributes? Leadership IQ studied about 20,000 new hires and 1,400 what we call HR executives. They were trying to find out why new hires what we call fail. They found that 89% of the what we call new hires they fail because of the attitudinal issues. Now, how the what we call attitude is what we call formed? We know that the attributes which is innate to the individual play a key role in shaping up his attitude. We are all familiar with the saying, attitude determines what we call attitude. For instance, what we call look at recruitment or selection. Naturally, each and every company would like to what we call select the best. But should we focus only what we call skills, or should we look at what we call the attributes? When you are focusing simply on skills, the team looks what we call quite good on paper. They might do well what we call in the normal times. But when the things don't happen the way what we call they should happen, or in a change scenario like COVID we have seen, relying on skills, does it help? Definitely not. In fact, the situation could become what we call toxic. It is the attributes those that determine the attitude of an what we call individual. Now, what more? In one of the what we call author talks, Mackinsey's Vanessa Burke, spoke to what we call retired Navy SEAL commander Rich Devine. He wrote an excellent book what we call The Attributes, where he deals with what we call attributes that determine or that will produce what we call outstanding performance. According to Rich Devine, performance is much deeper than the just visible skills. When you look at only the what we call skills and recruit the people, you might what we call falter. Based on his experience of dealing with the Navy SEALs, he came to the conclusion that it is the qualities or it is the attributes that what we call matter a lot, the way what we call people show up for performance. In fact, I will say that skills as well as behavioral competencies, that is attributes, both are what we call not mandatory. But one thing, it's not that easy to what we call to work upon what we call attributes. The way you work upon what we call skills, it has to be what we call different. But the beauty is that it's not impossible. Consistent practice could help us in improving what we call attributes. These attributes are innate, inborn. They inform us how we show up in situations like what we call stress, change, uncertain situation, etc. Now let us what take few examples of attributes like patience, situational awareness, adaptability. Now, when we are talking about what I call new normal, we are saying that empathy has become an obsolete word. People need to have what I call compassion. We are talking about agility. We are talking about what resilience. Now, most of these attributes they form into the categories of grit, mental acuity, drive, leadership, and the team ability. For instance, let's take what I call business health and what I call growth. We all know that business health and growth depends to a large extent what I call leadership, because it is the leaders who provide what I call a compelling vision and inspiring what I call people to give their best. Now, what sort of attributes leaders should have to drive what I call performance? They must be what I call authentic. They must be what I call flexible. They must be what I call compassionate. They must be what I call accountable. They must what I call display vulnerability, and they must what I call create an environment that takes care of their mental and emotional well-being. Similarly, look at what I call team's ability. We need what I call team members who display their vulnerability, who are willing to what I call share and grow together and all that. Now, how to go about when we talk about the importance of attributes? One can always look back and what I call do an autopsy of his or her performance. Now, for instance, when we find that we are not performing well in a particular situation, maybe we could work or reflect upon: am I adaptable? Am I willing to learn and what I call improve? In fact, Rich Dimney's book, The Attributes, is all about looking at our attributes and how to what I call develop them. Of course, every one of us we may not be that strong on the what I call attributes. We might be little lower on certain attributes, and we might be a bit stronger on certain other attributes. No choice is given to us. We can always either develop the what I call attributes on which we are lower, or what I call capitalize on what I call attributes which are what I call on which we are stronger. Like what I call great managers who try to what I call leverage the strengths of the people. But one thing we all need to remember is that attributes cannot be developed in the same way that we develop a what I call skill. For instance, what I call patience. To what I call to assess and to what I call develop, we need to what I call find an environment where we can what I call tease, we can our test our patience, and then what I call and try to work upon what I call improving. Yesterday, my wife, what I call gave me a suggestion that while talking to the what I call people, why not be bit more compassionate. So yesterday, when the plumber came to repair certain this thing in my what I call house, I was just what I call inquiring about what I call his family, especially during the COVID times and all that. He felt so happy, because I was not simply what I call in a hurry to get the work done. What I call ask the person to go. So I try to what I call test my patience, and I try to what I call test my what I call ability to what I call display compassion or empathy, and the results are there to what I call follow. Now, an important question that arises is to: does it help? Understanding about the attributes, does it help what I call a company or an individual? Yes, attributes are part of what I call hiring process. We shouldn't what I call do the hiring simply on the basis of skills. We should look at both skills as well as attributes. One person might what I call possess what I call the requisite skills, but may not have the requisite what I call attributes. Say for instance, what I call when you are recruiting for what I call a marketing job. So we need to know how patient he is, how perseverant what I call he is. In other words, attribute is one of the critical thing we need to what I call look at while recruiting. Now, this book by Rich Divney comes in very handy. In fact, I understand in the next 2 months they are going to what I call come up what I call to with a guidance how to what I call test these leadership attributes and how to develop them. So going by going through this book, trying to understand how we can introspect and how we can assess these attributes help us to develop. Today, we are in what called VUCA environment, in a highly competitive environment where all other resources are either accessible, available, or affordable. So, ability to understand, assess the attributes definitely helps us to to recruit the right kind of people with requisite training. They will give their best. Hope organizations in general and leaders in particular, and especially HR, managers in particular, will pay heed, to these attributes and develop a mechanism whereby they can assess and accordingly recruit the people so that when they are on the board, give their best for the outstanding performance of the organization. Thank you.